gym and had to start all over again. But this is a picture of Mr. Parrot. He actually was also the one that got the rights when they built the Thornton Hotel. When they were prepping the land for the foundation, they ran into a rich vein of copper there. And there really wasn't room for surface equipment, but Parrot actually got the rights to that vein and ended up building the smokehouse mine across the street at the Acoma. So here we are back up at the mine. Here's the start of the tracks. Kids back in the day didn't even need roller coasters. They just went to work with there. And here's the tramway coming into the smelter. They would have brought the ore right on in. And here's a picture of them bringing the empty ore cars back up the hill. Of course, this is pointing down. I wish they would have tilted the picture the other way. But that's what one of those cars would have looked like. Held 5 tons of ore, and the horses pulled them back up to the mine. And I believe there was a Parrot Street, would have been east of Shields. And I'm not sure if this line would have been going up Parrot Street, but perhaps. Now I just have some pictures of the Parrot Smelter with 1 T. I like this shot. All the smoke. Here's our big tailings pile. Silver Bowl Creek's probably right in here. Not much vegetation. Look at this, employed 300 men. Right now, Montana Resources employs only 350 men. So you can imagine if there were 9 smelters, they all had mines to supply them. I think at one time there were between 12 and 15,000 men working in Butte mining operations, and now we've got 350.
That must be from Freeman's.
It is.
1900.
Yep. Right at the end. Yeah. I love these slides basically because they all show the smog problem. Remember when you're blasting that air, you're taking copper sulfide and making it into copper. So what is your emission? SO2, sulfur dioxide, which we all know how sulfur smells, right? So you can imagine what Butte must have been like with 9 smelters putting this up their stack.
Plus the open roasting.
Exactly, and they did have open roasting kilns, or basically cribs at the Parrot as well. I'm not sure if you can make it out in this picture here, but that building is built out of slag bricks. So I'll just kind of zip through these. They're all pretty hazy. And I think this is to bring water into the smelter from the creek. But I'm not sure. It looks kind of to me like it might be going downhill to take water back to the creek.
More like tailings.
Yeah. Where do you think they ate their lunch? It's all pretty dirty, wasn't it?
You can see why they all got lunges.
Yeah, yeah. This building looks like it's made out of slag bricks. I love these guys up here on this middle tramway. No railing up there. Now if you're like over 3 feet in the air, you have to have a guard. Yeah. So this was way before MSHA. You notice that top one though does have a guardrail on it. Probably learned that the hard way.
So that middle one on the far left probably delivered coal to the line of boilers and whatnot there. Too.
Right here.
Yeah, right up there.
Okay. Keep your eye on these. These are slag carts. Later on we're going to talk a little bit about those. So here they are filling one of those carts with the slag. Why do you think that handle is so long? Heat,
It's
you're
hot.
right, probably dang hot. And then when you wanted to dump this thing, you probably needed a lot of leverage. So long handle to protect you from the heat, plus leverage. You probably just tipped it up and pulled it over and then ran it back in and got another one. I should have you talk about these, Larry.
Well, you have to sit and study those.
Yeah,
and
you
figure out
would,
what they
yeah.
are.
The one thing I do see in every one of these pictures is, you know, maybe it's the photography, but I think it was just very, very smoky down there. Very dirty, and you look at all these unguarded pieces of equipment that right now, I mean, there's probably $1 million worth of MSHA fines sitting in the cement right here. Here's a set of slag brick molds right there. I'm not sure, but I think this is probably the good stuff right there. That's probably a copper ingot. You can see the nice big gear. I think they're probably running it out. They probably had a loading dock to get it on the train to take it back to Connecticut. You know,
It's a slag car.
you think it's slag?
Like it's a slag car,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Just a smaller version of the one that's up at the mining museum.
Okay.
Looks like it has a gear at that end, so it works like a tipple.
Yeah. So here's a nice slag brick building right there.
Little trolley locomotive, pretty crude.
And this is the one from Freeman's book, Larry. This one right here. 1900. By then she was all shut down. You notice there's not a puff of smoke coming out of any of it.
Well, they had a fire in the mine, so the mine was shut down in 1920.
Exactly. Yeah, we got one slide coming up here. Back we're gonna get to pretty quick. So by 1890, Butte smoke problem was terrible, and the Parrot was discharging between 37 and 72 tons of sulfur per day. And I think that's more than the Exxon refinery in Billings puts out in like a year. Now me like driving by the refinery in Billings. Yeah. So in 1891, this gentleman by the name of Hutchinson is basically employed by the Parrot to come and try and do something about the smoke. And what they basically do is inject steam into the system, and what it does is creates sulfuric acid. So it doesn't go up the stack, it comes down the stack then. So they had one test and it was so-so. They had a second test. This time it was in the employment of the city council, and the test failed. And mysteriously Hutch leaves town in the middle of the night. You never see him again. But that was the first piece of air pollution control equipment that's recorded in American history.
Wow.
And Gaylord admits that they could have removed sulfur from the process, but they had no market for the sulfuric acid. So this is a shot, 1893, from Nanticoke Hill, up behind the courthouse. This is the old courthouse. So you're out looking on the flats. I think this is Idaho Street right here. Here's the Parrot Smelter here. Nice plume of smoke coming off this. This would have been the Butte Reduction Works. It's right about in here, and the Colorado Smelter would have been right next door to it. So I just happened to come across this on the internet about 2 years ago. Today in Old West history, October 21st, 1899, a funeral procession gets lost in a thick smelter smoke and ends up somehow at the Centennial Brewery. You gotta love Butte, right?
Yeah.
Okay, by 1890, not only, their payroll was $50,000 a month, which back in the day was huge. And they were using 750,000 gallons of water a day. right now Montana Resources, they basically circulate all their water, but they run about 11 million gallons a day and process about 50,000 tons of ore. And they eventually had to install tailings elevators because their pile kept growing and growing, so they had to get up and over the pile and throw it out farther and farther. And what that did is push Silverbow Creek farther and farther to the south. And this is the tailings tons discharged per day, 1895. And you can see the numbers kind of go up. And I would think it's not so much that they increased the capacity of the smelter, more that they were getting lower grade ore. But I'm probably a combination of both. But that's a lot of tons of tailings hitting the floodplain every day. And initially, when I read this, when we started drilling down there in 2009, I thought, man, we're gonna find a lot of copper in this stuff. Because even, initially they were running 4% copper in their tailings. And again, Montana Resources mines 0.25%. And then they installed some middlings, process in the middle of their process to recover some of the copper out of their tailings and reduce the into like 1.5%. So when we drilled up the Parrot initially, I thought, yeah, we're gonna get 1% copper in these things. And we got like 0.2%. And I thought, well, why is that? Why is that? And then later I said, I bet they precipitated those tailings. And come to find out they did, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is an interesting statement by Mr. Peters, their metallurgist. And he says, the loss of copper in tailings is considerable and under eastern conditions could not be tolerated. But it must be considered that in Butte, the ore is the cheapest thing we have. With fuel, labor, and machinery are extremely expensive, and that copper contained in the ore has cost so little to mine that it does not acquire any considerable value until a certain amount of labor has been expended on it. So really, what Butte had a lot of was ore. We didn't have much water, none of the other things we needed to process it, but there was no shortage of copper in the ore. So by 1896, hydroelectricity reaches Butte, and rumors start that Gaylord is going to move the Parrot Smelter to Whitehall. And at that same time, this is the middle of this, well, kind of towards the climax of the smoke wars. Judge Lindsay orders smelter companies to take steps necessary to prevent smoke from deluging the said city of Butte and smothering the inhabitants thereof. By April 4th, 1899, Mr. Grant of the Parrot Smelter reports that Amalgamated Copper Company purchased the controlling interest of the Parrot Silver and Copper Company and predicts that the Parrot Smelter would no longer be the cause of Butte's smoke problem. And his prediction comes true. May 1899, the Parrot Smelter closed. Ore from the Parrot mine is sent to the Colorado Smelter and the Anaconda Works. And you're right, that's right about when they had a big fire at the mine, and this is just a little, it shows the before and after of that mine fire in 1900. So there it is, Parrot mine destroyed. Fire destroys surface buildings. By late 1899, Gaylord and Amalgamated moved the Parrot Smelter equipment to Parrot Castle on the Jefferson River to smelt ore from the Mayflower mine. The smelter never ran, and the equipment was sold for scrap. Does anybody know where Parrot Castle is? Got any fishermen here? Yeah, it's a good spot to go fishing. From 1900 to 1917, Amalgamated retooled the Parrot concentrator to treat up to 300 tons of ore per day. So they still kept processing ore through the concentrator even though they weren't using the smelter. And two of the articles that I found here at the archives were called "The Queer Spots in and About Butte." And the first one was on the the first one, after we found out there wasn't much copper in the tailings, I came across this article, "The Precipitating Plants of Butte." And it talks, this little red arrow here talks about the strongest water in the camp is found at the Parrot Smelter. So they reprocess those tailings. And these are about the actual size. They're from the 1906 Anaconda Standard. There's 40 of these articles. I've been trying to get the Montana Standard to republish them, but you know, the vernacular in 1906 could be offensive to people today. Plus they told me they needed them all written out in Word.
Oh, jeez.
I've done about 6 of them, but that's about it. And this second Queer Spots article that talks about the dismantled smelters of Butte. And this particular one points to the Parrot Smelter after it was basically scrapped. But I did go to the expense on my own to copy all those articles. I got them all scanned. And they do have them available if you bring up a thumb drive. Kim or one of her partners would put those articles on the thumb drive for you. They're very interesting reads. They're great. They're a treasure. So the new Parrot Smelter on the Jefferson River, there it is being built. Looks like at great expense. There's the Jefferson River, and it never ran. Interesting thing happened also in 1906. The Magone versus Amalgamated lawsuit. Magone was a rancher in the Deer Lodge Valley who sued basically every mining company in Butte because at his ranch there were tailings washing up on his pastures and basically killing the vegetation so his cattle and horses couldn't graze. This case was defended by a young man named Cornelius Kelly for amalgamated copper, and of course he won. But this picture here shows a scientist actually gathering samples from the Parrot tailings for the Magone trial. This utility pole is still there. I'm just kidding. Okay, from 1904 to 1906, precip plants are popping up all over town. Every tailings pile there was, some mom and pop operation had come in and set up their, basically what they would do is they would run water, and if they had enough money, they would put acid in their water, and they get better extraction of the copper from the tailings. And then they'd run that water across the crib, a wooden crib, and in that crib they would put scrap metal, tin, iron, whatever they could get their hands on. And in one respect, Butte was the cleanest city in America because you could not find a tin can anywhere.
Wow.
So there were 2 entrepreneurs called Morley and Elwin, and they started the little precip plant on the Parrot tailings, and of course, it ends in a lawsuit. By 1910, Amalgamated becomes Anaconda, and they basically convert all of your Parrot stock to Anaconda Company stock. So that's on paper the end of the Parrot Silver and Copper Company. And in the mid-1940s, the ACM actually reworked the Parrot tailings pile. I found this out anecdotally by one of the gentlemen who worked at that plant. And he said during World War II, they ran those tailings through the precip process again. That's why we only found like 0.2% copper in it. But the thing that you should know is that even though the tailings only have 0.2% copper, the original soil horizon below that, which is typically 3 feet of nice humus material, because remember it's the floodplain of the creek, very nice silty, clayey material, has about 1% copper in it. And we figured just by doing those samples and calculating the concentration by the volume of that soil, there's probably about 3,000 pounds of copper in the soil behind the Civic Center. And by 1957, they started the Berkeley pit, and they were looking for places to put that overburden, and they started putting it on top of the Parrot tailings pile. In 1978, once Butte and the County of Silver Bow consolidated, they got Model City money to build the shops, and they put them right there on top of the Parrot tailings. Prior to that, when I was growing up, played football for South Central, and that was our practice field, and Butte Central used to practice there as well. Not a blade of grass on it back then. Here's just a typical one of these little mom and pop operations. They're running water across. They would just build these cribs, throw the scrap in, run that water through it after they'd run the water across the tailings. And this is actually Allowen and Morley before Allowen versus Morley. I think they were probably just fighting over the dog.
He's waiting for the geese.
And another great resource they have at the archives here are the Sanborn maps. And this is one from, I think, 1884 of the Parrot mine. And this is the 1884 of the Parrot Smelter. And here you can see they've dredged Silver Gold Creek. They have a slough. And I'm just going to zoom in on that real quick, so I got a kick out of this. Slough from mountain stream. That's your Silver Bow Creek back in the day. It was a mountain stream. And, oops, I think I missed one there. Oh, here's the 1900. Oh, I guess I put this here to show you how they dug the slough and brought it right into the smelter here. Does anybody know what this little black spot is there? Here's Harrison Avenue. The Civic Center would be about right past. This is the Parrot tailings right here. And you can see they kind of have them windrowed up here. And I think it's probably from digging the trenches to run the water through, so they could run that through the precip process. And here it is in 1958. This is Texas Avenue here. And I think this is Silver Bow Creek straining to get through the tailings right here.
So the county shops would be just to the left.
County shops would be right off the picture, yeah. Yeah. Fishing wasn't very good back in the day. Here's a 1955 Montana Department of Transportation aerial. Here's the Civic Center right here. So this is Harrison Avenue. This is Blacktail Creek. Here's the confluence. So if you follow Silver Bow Creek back, this is an area called the Diggings East. When the prospectors started in Silver Bow, when they came east, this is about as far east as they got, and they realized the gold was coming off the hill, so they worked the gulches going up the hill. And that's the Diggings East. This is on the north side of the creek, so we call these the north side tailings. And these are all the Parrot tailings back here. You can see how big this area is, and actually, you know, where we're planning on excavating is only in this area right in here. And this area back here is Montana Resources Crusher now, and the Berkeley probably starts right back in here. This would be the Butte Reduction Works. Everybody remember the Colorado tailings? Yeah. Basically everything white in this picture is indicative of mine waste, because they're phytotoxic and you can't grow a blade of grass on any of it. Except that's Clark's Park. Oh, trivia question for you. Larry might remember this. What's that right there, Larry? This is about where Columbus Plaza is.
Bridgeway.
Yeah, that's the old drive-in.
That was before my time.
All right, here's an interesting story. It's lots of fun. Wow. So my wife's uncle is Arnold Olson, my dad, during our wedding, the rehearsal dinner, Arnold comes in and my dad said, watch this guy work the crowd. He's a consummate politician. And Arnold went around and shook everybody's hand and talked to everybody, knew everybody by their first name and knew their wife and knew their kids. And so I just thought, this guy is impressive. And so I wanted to get to know him. So over the years, I got to know Arnold. And one of the stories he told me was when he came back from World War II, got his law degree, and became the Attorney General for the state of Montana, I think from 1948 to 52, and then 52 to 58, and then he was going to run for governor. So the Democratic Party wanted to endorse him, but they said, Arnold, you know, you wiped out gambling in every town but Butte. If you want our endorsement for governor, you're going to have to do something about gambling in Butte. And he knew the consequences of doing that because it was a big deal in Butte. Butte was a gambling place. So anyway, he conducts these raids on every bar in town and confiscates their slot machines. And he told me I had death threats like you would not believe. I said, no, I can't believe that. And I said, well, what'd you do with the slot machines? He said, well, we buried them behind the Civic Center. And so I went back, and this is 1956, and part of the big thing about gambling is this is a time when America is very sensitive to organized crime, and gambling was always associated with organized crime. But I think in Butte it was more mom and pop operations. But anyway, he conducts these raids, they confiscate all these slot machines, and they take them to the city landfill.
Jeez.
And this is a picture of them.
Oh my,
They smashed them and burned them
oh my God.
and buried them in the landfill behind the Civic Center. This article went on to say it's at the end of Texas Avenue. So I think it's probably underneath the set of elevated tracks that comes out of Montana Resources. So we won't be excavating them, but after I remember Arnold's story, I had to go almost all slag. And so these are the slag piles. Imagine the picture there. It made me think of this 1898 picture. Here's our slag carts. So I think when we think of a slag pile, I automatically think of what we have down at Butte Reduction Works, big, nice poured monoliths. But we went out there with the biggest track hole we could find. Ellie really was not happy with us because we were right in the middle of their stuff. So we dug a nice big hole, and guess what we got out of that hole?
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, so this one wasn't actually out of that pit that you saw in the picture. This one was out in the ball field area. So this one literally came out of it. And if you want to see this monster, we left it on the surface out there. If you drive down Civic Center Road, if you're heading east, the ball field's on your left. There's the well where that blue water comes from. Well, we left this slag ingot right by it.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure nobody's going to steal it. You never know, but I bet it's probably 350 pounds. There it is on the ground, right by Civic Center Road.
I think I hit that in January. Dumping my
It's in Keith's yard now. What's your address? You don't see it. These are just some, overburdened stuff, but if you remember back to that 1955 aerial photo, if we remove the Parrot tailings, the diggings east area, and there's a berm on Blacktail Creek, it's all made out of tailings. It's basically 700 to 800,000 cubic yards. And to put that in perspective, it's about 26 to 30 Finlands. I'm trying to get that accepted as a known unit of measurement. But they won't go for it because only us know what a Finland is. But total cost to do all the removals is probably $30 to $40 million. But here's kind of why it's important, because the massive copper, again, we sampled all this stuff and we know the volume of the waste. Multiply the volume times the concentration, you can come up with the mass. From basically Texas Avenue all the way down to Montana Street through the old floodplain, there's about 15 million pounds of copper in the soil and about almost 25 million pounds of zinc. And some of it's in contact with groundwater, so we know it's going to leach, but you do have snow melt, you have rain that will percolate through the tailings, it gets it to groundwater, and how long will it take to clean that up? Well, right now we have a subdrain system that collects supposedly all that water, and it takes it down to the Butte treatment lagoons where the Colorado tailings were, and they add a line to it, and they take out about 20 pounds of copper a day. So if you just extrapolate that, let's keep everything constant, how long would it take to clean up that mess? 2,000 years.
Wow.
So that's why we're advocating for removal of all these wastes in that floodplain. These are all the references from that presentation. If y'all gotta leave, go ahead. If you want to hear a 15-minute talk about feral industries, I'd be happy to do that, Kim, if we still have time.
As long as we are out of here by 2 o'clock.
And it is what time?
1:32.